Up and running now? Okay, so we're live. We appreciate everybody being here this morning. Apologize for our tardiness. We've been working on, in another office, this group on increasing our knowledge on issues, so we appreciate your patience with us. We really have, most committees don't try to do 5 bills in 2 hours, but these are little bills. And I think we can work through these rather quickly. And go from there. So with that, Ms. Jeffrey, would you please call the roll?
Good morning. Representative Bear.
Here.
Representative Byron.
Here.
Representative Locke.
Present.
Representative Northrup.
Here.
Representative Oakley.
Here.
Representative Storer.
Here.
Representative Strock.
Here.
Representative Zwanitzer.
Here.
Chairman Harshman.
Here.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, the first bill for our consideration upon, and we're just going to go in order here, is House Bill 64. We've announced this a couple times. We ran out of time in meetings. This is a Select Committee on Cap Finance bill. I serve on that committee. I guess I would be the one to just introduce, but really what we're trying to do with this bill is clean up some of the obligations. I always talk about the LSRA as being the hardest working account in state government. And over the years, we've borrowed from it, or we've put provisions to borrow from it, or we've used it to back up certain things. And so there's been as many as 20 items where we've siloed out in it. This bill, we looked at all of those, all 20 of those, and we really have come down to just these 2 issues where we thought we could reduce or eliminate. So you can read the title of the bill talks about that. And really in the first sentence, amending or eliminating unnecessary or obsolete borrowing authority or guarantees from the LSRA as specified. So members and members of the public, this really on page 2, 91418. These are just loans for transportation loans, because it's really a cash flow issue with our Department of Transportation when federal funds and gas tax revenues come in. That was set at 200 million that they could borrow from this to keep these projects moving, and it's just money that's more of an accounting issue than anything else. They've never used that amount, and the amount never used up over 100. So the proposal is to reduce that to 100 million. And then on page 3, members, this it's probably been 15 years ago where we've allowed school districts to join the state insurance plan. And initially there's a cash flow issue with that. As districts move forward, there's only been one school district do it though since then. And so really, it's really unneeded. And so that's why that is in there as well. And so with that, that really is the bill. Pretty simple little bill. The title's pretty tight. I was looking at amending a few things into it. But I've given the makeup of our rules committee. I decided not to this morning. So with that, are there any questions, members? Bill, are there any folks here would like to testify on this bill? Pretty exciting bill. Okay, seeing no testimony. Anybody online want to testify on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 people online. If anyone would like to testify, if they'd raise their hand, we could let them in.
On this bill? I don't think so. Okay, so there's no public comment or testimony on this bill. So I'm going to close public comment on this bill. Members, what's your pleasure on House Bill 64? Representative Zwanitzer moves the bill?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I move House Bill 64.
And seconded by Representative Oakley. Are there any amendments or any questions on the bill?
Let's have some fun.
Okay, sensing you're ready to vote. Okay, please call the roll on House Bill 64.
Representative Bear.
Aye.
Representative Byron.
Aye.
Representative Locke.
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strauch,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
Aye.
and Chairman Harshman.
Aye. Okay, that's our first little bill. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 77. This little bill is actually my bill. The speaker sent it to us. It's an individual bill. Members, if you flip over to page 2 and you can see the amended language. Currently, a student in Wyoming, it used to be 50%. It was 50% for nearly 20 years. 2018 conference committee, this was moved to 80%. And at the time I said 80 is the wrong number. It should be 75. And anyway, it was, how conference committees, there were a lot of things involved in that committee. And so this stuck. So why 75 and 80 and why really, I don't think it's going to cost 1 penny more to the state. When most of us were in school and many of us were educated in Wyoming, most of the period days were like 6 period days in high school, or maybe a 7 period day. And if you were a senior and you had a job and you wanted to get out of school early, or maybe come to school and miss first period, that was all worked in. Or if you, had seminary, you're going to leave for an hour to go across the street, have seminary, all those kind of things. Well, in a 6 period day or a 7 period day, if you miss one of those periods, you're well over 80%. Doesn't matter. But many of our schools now have gone to these block schedules where it's just 4 periods a day, and they're like 90-minute periods. And so if you're a senior and you're going to miss one of those periods because you've got all your credits and you're going to work early, or you're going to seminary, or you just don't want to go full time. So when you take one of those periods out of a 4 period day, 75%. So how have districts responded? Because you got to keep the student at full-time equivalency, right? So you take about 8-9 minutes out of all 4 periods and you create a homeroom. That's 30 minutes long. And I'm not dishing on homerooms. There's a lot of good that happens in those, but we have forced districts to do this now. So you take 10 minutes out of your math class, 10 minutes out of your science class every day, 10 minutes out of your English class, and 10 minutes out of an elective class, and you put this into a homeroom. So you get basically less instruction time to move. So then when a student is 3 and the homeroom gets them over 80%. So that's what we're incentivizing, is to really shorten instruction time, and that's why I'm bringing the bill. So any questions? I hope I explained that right. Members, Representative Bear and then Representative Northrup, and then I'll keep moving down this way. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and that was a great explanation and helpful. Can you let us know how many school districts are doing this block program, and really, what are we changing this global situation for to accommodate how many school districts?
Representative Bears, good question. I don't know, probably half. Campbell County does not. They kind of went the opposite way. They lowered graduation credit requirements to keep that. And I think they've got a 6 or 7 period day. But many do, Natrona's gone to that, of course. A lot of our, I think Rock Springs, Sweetwater County. So, but that's a good question. I don't know exactly how many. And I don't think it's going to cost 1 penny more, because the same kids that are at 81% are because of a homeroom. Now, if the district says, hey, we don't have to do this homeroom now, and we're going to put more time back in the math class, right? You're not going to change the full-time equivalency. So, Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'd just like to point out that if you have a 7 period based high school, that 1/7 of that represents 14%. If you drop to a 6 periods, that was 16.6% of the time. You have to drop clear down to a 1/4 to make this bill to where it is. Like I said, so that's block grant's the only place that this is really gonna affect,
It is, totally.
or block, not grant, sorry.
Block scheduling,
scheduling.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Representative Bear.
In the scenario that you provided on the block schedules, where a student misses one of those blocks for an alternative program that they're in, that's 25% of their classroom time. That's pretty significant. Should we be counting them as a full-time student if they're missing a quarter of their classroom time?
Yeah, and I think you could ask the question even 80%, 20% is significant, you know? And I think the policy thing though with this statute is what are we incentivizing? And I think there's I don't think anybody really thought about it at that time, but really what we've incentivized or forced block schedule districts to do is to take away instruction time. You just have to. And if you have, you know, and maybe we all remember those days as a senior in high school, and you need 25 credits to graduate, and you're already pretty much there as a senior when your last semester, your senior year, or whatever it is. And so you go work or you go do other things. So, and I'll just say, members, the original policy was 50%. And this is every day. I mean, this is a daily thing. And so that's how it's calculated. Okay, and I'll move to the audience here. If there's any, appreciate the questions. Anybody here would like to testify? We'll open this up to public comment. Morning. Please, you know the drill on this. Please introduce yourself.
Chairman Harshman, Boyd Brown, Wyoming School Boards Association. I think you framed the issue very well. There's a couple things that I'd like to talk about. I do believe that this does level the playing field across the state for all the school districts on how they can do that. The other thing that I would remind this committee that you're probably not aware of is that the funding model is built on a block schedule with 75%. So I think there's a couple things that it does there. One, it matches how the funding model is built, and then it also levels the playing field for all of the school districts across the state. And with that, I would answer questions.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Brown? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Brown. Appreciate all of your expertise in this area. What is your thoughts on, you know, students routinely missing 25% of their education on a daily basis is what we've been told about this situation, and then being counted as a full-time employee or a full-time student? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I would go back to where we had been previously. I think this has only been like 4 or 5 years that we've done this. Previous to that, it was 50% of the day. I think it also gives students that opportunity to go out there and find real work and get that opportunity to have some areas there. So I think there's the opportunity for students to get real world experience there. I don't think that it's going to change how much we fund. I don't think we're going to have more students or less students missing the day. I do believe, like the good chairman said, that there will be some more time put back into instruction because we'll remove the time that they have for some of the homerooms and study halls to make sure that they had 70 or 80% of the day in the classroom. So I don't think it's going to change how much instruction. It may even give more instruction time. So I don't see a big issue with it.
So, Mr. Brown, and we're not talking freshmen. I mean, your experience in education, we're not talking freshmen. Freshmen are there all day, sophomores, juniors. It's really talking about seniors, maybe.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that almost all the time it's seniors. I can think in my career as a principal and a superintendent, there were some hardships where we had some juniors going out and working because of family situations, or they were parents themselves and different things like that we would allow some juniors to miss. But for the most part, it is seniors going out, getting jobs, or seniors doing some other things.
Okay, very good. Representative Locke has a question for you.
So kind of two questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, yeah, you're good. Working through the chairman all the
Thank you. So 2 quick questions. Just first, so you're talking, is this block process applied to all the grades? Is this kind of 4 blocks? Is that something that these different districts have applied to, freshmen through seniors? Is that applied there? And then the second question is just, it's been talked about that you don't think there will be additional money associated with this. Can you talk to that just a little bit more? We don't believe additional funding will be required. Can you just speak to that briefly as well? Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, Representative Locke, for your first question, most school districts and schools have the exact same schedule for freshmen through seniors. Now, when you get to junior high or middle school or elementary, schedules are usually quite different than the high school schedule. Sometimes not, but frequently they are. So I would say that 9 through 12, the schedules are the same. When you look at the block schedule, there are 2 different types of block schedules. One is an immersion block schedule where you take the class every single day. The other is an alternating block schedule where you take one every other day. And so most schools run one or the other of those. Sometimes there's a little bit of a combination. The second question that you had about it not costing anymore, I do believe that most school districts have, as the chairman said, found a workaround so that those students could miss a period a day. So I think it just gives us that opportunity so that those are the same students that are going to miss that period anyway. And so I don't think it's going to change how the funding will work for them.
So, Mr. Brown, and, so if you take like a 175-day school year, divide that in half, and then, so if it's, and that would be an immersion block, times 10 minutes a day. I was just doing a little league math here. 870 minutes divided by 60, so it's 14 and a half hours that gets pulled out of a math class or a science class or an English class or any other class to create a homeroom. I mean, this is so important because the pie is only this big. And if you keep slicing it up a little smaller, I mean, and so that's the point. I think it's just through this policy, we have basically forced block scheduling school districts to go to homerooms so they can make sure every kid gets to 80%. And
Mr. Chairman, whenever I do simple math in my head, I'm going to say 15 minutes a day. And then if you look at the 4 cores, math, social studies, science, and language arts, that's an hour a day.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Brown? Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Okay, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity for a follow-up. We discussed these people who are going out and getting real world experience, and I think we can agree that that's a great way for seniors to, prepare themselves for real life. But we also have those that are truant. I have to almost indict my own education because when I was a senior, I found ways to not be in class a lot. But is there a way, this bill doesn't seem to differentiate between truancy and real people going out and getting real world experience. I understand the idea that we want to support that type of behavior, but we don't want to support truancy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Representative Brown. What is the definition of truant?
Mr. Chairman, a truant is a person who misses a class that they're scheduled for. This would be different than being truant, and the funding model works on average daily membership, not average daily attendance, so it won't change how that works. If a student is truant, they would be considered absent, but they would still be registered in a class and counted for that class for that day, for the funding model purposes. They will be counted truant, and my assumption is that each district, well, I know each district has a truancy policy, and they would deal with each truancy policy based on their rules and roles. So being truant or having one less class are 2 separate things that won't affect the same thing. Does that make sense, Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
I shouldn't ask you guys questions. I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's check for understanding. I get it. Okay, and I'm nodding my head, giving you feedback. Okay, anything else? Are there any other, appreciate your testimony. Thanks for being here. Anybody else would like to comment on this bill? Go ahead. And this is just a little bill. Oh, it's good. There are all these nuances. We got to fix little problems. So go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. Just didn't really intend to speak, but wanted to follow up a little bit on some of your conversation to make sure that y'all understand how funding works and why this change is necessary. So I think there's a misperception that schools are funded based on numbers of kids. That is only a small part of how funding works. There's really 30-some elements, 36, 38 elements in the school funding model. Most of it's built around schools. So you're looking at how many kids are there to create schools. And so you have these prototypical schools, and that's kind of the building blocks of the funding model. ADM does count toward what is a prototypical school, and then ADM counts in other parts of the model. So you hear that there are numbers, 12,000, 16,000 different numbers that people will use to say how schools are funded. So it's not really just, hey, you get a check per kid based on how much that kid's there in school or how much time they spend around. It's a really complex model. These 30-some different elements kind of all work together to contribute toward the funding of the school overall. So as you talk about membership, average daily membership, as Dr. Brown was talking about, now you're talking about the kids that are enrolled in classes, kids that are signed up, enrolled in classes, not just their attendance. But then as they participate in those classes, you have state requirements for graduation. So the state says there's this number of things that you must do in order to graduate from high school. There's this number of things, the classes that you must pass, requirements for that. And then districts will add on top of that. So only kids that have completed those kinds of requirements are able to have sort of flexibilities in their schedule, that are on track, that are moving toward graduation. And then, so why do they leave? And I think Mr. Chairman mentioned the reasons that they leave are oftentimes to attend other types of activity going on in their life. So you've heard of seminary, which is a religious instruction, and there's a couple of different churches that say, hey, we still want our kiddos to be able to get religious instruction. So if they're to leave campus during the day, the public school can't provide that. They get their seminary class. They're still going to class, but they're not counted as instruction in school. So they have to take time away from school for that. Perhaps if they're working, hopefully with apprenticeships coming along the way, there's more opportunities for kids to get credits for that. But those exist a few places, but we're working on that. That's a thing that's coming along. But that kiddo that's got to work, that's got to leave, sometimes they're helping contribute toward the family income. They're contributing toward their family stability. And so they've got to be away and work, or they're moving toward their own professional development. They're maybe engaged in something related to a trade or something like that. That's more where they want to go. And so they've got their English classes, they've got their math classes. So we're talking the kids that are at the end of their careers, that are missing something, high school kids, that are on track, that are taking time away to do other activities. And this small change from 80 to 75 is not about allowing them to miss one more class or a little bit more school time. What this is about how scheduling at the schools work, and whether or not kids are going to spend some time in some other structures, or if they're going to spend the majority of their time in classroom instruction. So is it a study hall? Is it a homeroom? Is it something like that? Or are we going to look at those blocked periods as instruction time for the kid to be spending now on their mathematics, on their science, on their other stuff? So this transition really is a nuance, but it's a simple thing to ensure that kids are spending more time with classroom instruction. It's not more time away from class. It just has to do with how the day is scheduled for these kids that are going to be doing other stuff. So hopefully, Mr. Chairman, that a little bit helps. As to your discussion, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Farmer, Representative Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Farmer, thank you for being here and sharing your point of view. I'd like to ask you, we've just gone through a pandemic. It's been a huge effect on the schools and how we teach. And there seems to have been a lot of people looking for alternative methods of education. Do you see that this change in the amount of time people are spending in the blocks could have anything to do with these alternative types of education and therefore affecting the ADM? And I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, most schools that use block schedules have been in blocks for quite some time. This discussion around how to structure the day, is it more effective to have 60-minute periods or 90-minute periods, is really moved from educational research around what is the most effective instructional practice. So that's a long-standing history, a long-standing practice. I don't think we yet know the impacts of the pandemic as to alternate instruction or alternate forms of instruction. The only thing that we can say that we are certainly seeing now is a greater use of virtual days as opposed to snow days when kids are not able to be in brick and mortar. But as of yet, I don't think we've noticed any changes in a scheduling of a day of a student.
Okay, thank you. You had a follow-up? Okay, everybody good? Representative Locke, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. Do you perceive this as an advantage in some way to these students who they've fulfilled their requirements or they're close to fulfilling their requirements? Other than just the ability to go work or do these other things, does this 80 to 25% in some way help them in their education? I just want to make sure I clearly understand that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Representative, I believe what it helps them is it helps them by giving them more time in their math class, more time in their science class. The kids who are taking alternate activities, seminary, work, whatever, they're inclined to do that regardless of whether the number is 75%, 80%. The kid's going to do what the kid's going to do. So long as they're allowed to pursue those activities, they're going to pursue those activities. This switch means that the child is now spending more time in classroom instruction as opposed to alternate schedules such as the homeroom, study hall, or something else. So it is absolutely advantageous to the student to have more time in classroom instruction.
And really, it's all kids, because all kids are 9 through 12 are under this schedule. It's not just the ones who are going to work. Most importantly, it's freshmen, sophomores, everybody. It's the structure. Very good. Any other questions? Thank you for
Mr.
being
Chairman?
here. You had a question, Representative Storr?
Thank you, Mr.
You're
Chairman.
almost off the hot seat. Go
I
ahead.
just, to the point you just commented, I just want to make sure I understand, Mr. Farmer, that the issue of the 80% is driving the schedule for all the other students by making sure that it's still, the ADM still works for the kids that are involved in alternate activities. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
it is correct, and it's really a great point that all students will benefit from the change from 80 to 75 because it gives all students an opportunity for more classroom instruction. All students benefit.
Thank you. Okay, any others? Now I think you're off the hot seat officially. Okay, is there anyone else in this room would like to testify or comment on this bill? Anyone online for this bill?
Mr. Chairman, we have Sarah Bieber online. I'll admit her.
Sarah Bieber. Okay, Sarah, I didn't have her on the pre-sign up here, but okay, quickly, Miss Bieber. Welcome. Can you show us?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We just can't see you.
My internet is very weak and so my camera keeps freezing. I'm sorry, I didn't want that to be distracting, so I didn't do the camera part.
Okay.
My name is Sarah Bieber. I am from Casper. I am a mom. I do have a daughter that attends some classes in the school district here. I think I have more questions than comment, really. So as a homeschool parent, we use parts of the school district, but she doesn't go full time. So there's a potential that she could take 3 classes in a school district, and that allows them to count her attending more than she's actually attending and potentially increasing funding that they would be getting for her
I
than
think,
previously.
well, I think the real issue is that your kid would have 10 more minutes in those classes that they attend, potentially. As
Okay. So the ADM change isn't targeted towards the funding that the school districts get for the ADM?
Ms. Bieber, in my opinion, I think the funding is very minimal. I think this is all about the structure that the model, because districts are responding to the law we passed, so they're making sure in a block schedule that they get to 80% with as many kids as possible, and so that's how they do that.
Is there a reason that we're not able to get to the 80%, or has it historically been a trend that we haven't hit the 80%?
No, actually, it used to be 50% was the old law, but once again, 3 out of 4 is 75. And so how do you get to 80 in a 3 out of 4 situation is you schedule an alternative piece to that is a little shorter, like a study hall or a homeroom. And where do you get that time? You take it away from the other 4 blocks.
Okay.
Okay?
And concurrent enrollment with kiddos in the district that do college classes, or when your mid-level kiddos go to the high school to take a high school class, but they're still mid-level, that doesn't change their.
Doesn't affect it at all.
Okay.
No effect on that.
Okay.
Appreciate you zooming in.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here? Then nobody else on the Zoom? Okay. Anybody else here? Okay, going to close public comment. Members, it's your pleasure on the bill. And moved by Representative Oakley,
Second.
seconded by Representative Storr. Members, any questions or any amendments on the bill? Pretty simple little bill. Representative Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I probably have a question and a comment here. So we moved from 50% to 80% at some point in the past, and maybe you could, just share with us what that was about. I think I could guess that it was more about ensuring that people were getting the classroom time that the body or the legislator felt was necessary. But maybe you could allude to what that purpose was.
I think it was, Representative Bear, I think it was really part of as I recall, I think it was 2018 or 17, we had a significant school deficit. And so we're going through all these parts, and there were about 5 parts to this. One was taking the $9 million cap off state lands royalties. The other was linking any shortfalls to the LSRA. The other part was 0.45% of the SIPA for school CapCon. I mean, there were several policy things into a bill. And one of these was this ADM calculation to raise that. And so in the negotiations, and I wasn't on the conference committee, former Representative Greer chaired that. Peperinen, Representative Peperinen was on that in the House side. But anyway, that was part of the agreement, when you have 3 members in a conference committee from each chamber at the waning days of the session. And that's where it went. And when it came back to me, I said, man, that's really unfortunate, this 80%. because this is what's gonna, and that, this has been what's happened, and I don't think we all realize, but 75 is the right number. It went from 50 to 80, and it should have went from 50 to 75. And I think then it's gonna add more instruction time for kids in our districts with block schedules instead of less instruction time. So that's really it, yeah. That's how it came about. There wasn't like a specific bill that was debated like this bill to raise it from 50 to 80. You know, I think probably a position between the two bodies. Okay? Any other comments, questions? Are we ready to vote? Question on the bill, please call the roll. And this is on House Bill 77.
Representative Bear,
No?
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke. No. Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley. Aye. Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strock,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
No.
Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
6 ayes, 3 noes.
Okay,
Bill
thank you.
passes.
Now we have our next little bill. So that's 2 bills down. We got 3 to go. Okay, our next little bill is House Bill 169, K-12 post-secondary education options. It's another little bill that was sent to our committee. How many of you members are on the education committee? I know we have the chairman. Okay, I think this good speaker will send bills around when committees are full to try to keep everybody moving. But this is one got sent to our committee. This, again, members, on the back side, you can see the existing statute. Okay, and this is really about dual and concurrent post-secondary classes, generally seniors. And here's what I see, and this is why I just wanted to kind of put a goal out there. It doesn't really tell districts that they have to do any of this, but you read the current language. And I'll just start on line 6. Education options programs pursuant to this section make them reasonably accessible to eligible students. And when I read that, what does that mean? And so then I see some districts do really an amazing job. And I think many homeschool kids, their parents get them in the BOCES and get them going, do an amazing job. And then some districts do an okay job. And I guess what would be a kind of I'm thinking about my 4 kids as raised and went through the school system and I'm a teacher. A lot of this I didn't know. And I think as I raised my own kids, I realized these opportunities that are out there. And so I wanted to just kind of put a goal out there. And so you can see the new language. This section, accessible to eligible students to the greatest extent reasonably possible, which shall include ensuring access to a minimum of 12 post-secondary credit hours to be completed in grades 9 through 12. So that's it, just trying to put a goal out there, 12. So pretty simple little bill. Any questions on that? Chairman Northrup, Chairman of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, almost said Speaker. So I just want to point out that in order for high school teachers to be able to teach these classes, they have to have what are called college credentials, and that is usually done by Higher Learning Commission, or HLC, and the HLC will credential the people to make sure that they are up to snuff at the high school level. So the other way that these kids could get this would be online classes, and I'll just use Matitsi, as I'm on a ramble right now, as a good example. Matitsi doesn't have hardly anybody that can do this teaching in class, but they do a whole bunch of online. And those kids are coming out of school with 30, 40
Serious?
online credits, college level. So it's working very well to do it online. As the latest little disease outbreak we had that will remain nameless, with that we have proven that we can do online pretty well now, and everybody got used to it. So, but before that, these kids were getting it done.
See, in my community where we have a community college, they go to the college, you know? So it's probably different everywhere it looks, but that's interesting.
Mr. Chairman, in my community, they go to the college too, but
Yeah.
that's the problem that we have, is that those teachers at high school oftentimes don't have the credentials to be able to teach the classes, so they
Yeah,
have to
minimum
go.
master's
Yeah,
degree,
have
yeah.
to be able to go to the college. Yeah.
Okay, Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just am not I'm not a huge fan of the language of this. To the greatest extent reasonably possible, as far as what reasonably, I mean, I don't know if that helps, but then after that, then comes a shall. I mean, a shall is a shall. It's a command. So which are we going with? It would be I mean, are we back to the extent possible, this should be provided, or is this a shall? I
Sounds
just,
like we're gonna have an amendment.
well, and then I'm glad we're having discussion, because we might have an amendment, but I guess policy-wise, I'd like to maybe have some discussion on which way we're going. Are we saying to the greatest extent possible, this should be provided? Or are we changing it and we're going with shall? I'd like some thoughts
Yeah,
or
it's a good
discussion on
point.
it.
I agree. As you read it, it's got the reasonably and the shall, and I agree. I think it's a very good point. Representative Swanson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And as the person who used to do this for my community college and credential our instructors in high school and go through what was required, I think the really important part that maybe we're not pointing out is the eligible students. And so students have to qualify. In our school district, we try to guarantee 12 hours already, which is basically one class each semester, their junior and senior year. We do occasionally have a 9th or 10th grader in school district 2 in my county come into one of the classes I teach. But I do want to make sure the committee knows when we talk about eligible students, we're not talking about every student in that high school. In many cases, they have to meet a minimum GPA, or they have to take English 1000 at the college level first to ensure they're eligible to take any of these other courses. Every now and then you do have like an automotive or a welding or a career tech ed course that don't have the same minimum requirements, but they have high school programs which make them eligible in training for those. So I think the language is what my school district's are already doing. I'm not sure if reasonably accessible to the greatest extent reasonably possible makes a difference to me. I'm a little bit worried about 9th graders in some cases, but there might be some that are ready for some courses that can't be offered in that high school. And I do think the exciting thing is like language courses. My kid's doing Japanese, which you can't find in my district, but they can do that online and get credit for it. So I do think it allows some options for kids who are ready. But I would point out eligible students is really the key word, because there are requirements.
Which is existing language.
Which is existing language.
Yeah.
Because we do this in a lot of cases already. I think you're
Right.
just encouraging it to the greatest extent reasonably possible.
Yeah, the shall word is problematic as I keep reading it. I mean, I don't like telling locally elected school boards what to do necessarily, or trustees, but we can work on that. Any other questions down here? Members? Okay, Representative Locke's got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is really just a question to educate me a little bit. So as Representative mentioned earlier, so there's these online options. Does part of meeting this requirement just the school being able to bring in this online capability or supporting this for their students? Is that included as part of this? Or is it one of those situation where they have to have this capability, the teachers trained, or are both an option? Thank you.
So, and really, Representative, I think, as I see it, you've got really two levels in Wyoming. It's dual or it's concurrent, right? And one is taught at the high school by a qualified instructor. And then the other, they leave campus and attend the community college and are taught. So that's really our deal. And it's going on really in every school district in Wyoming. So this is not a new program. But I just think some school districts are really knocking it out of the park. I mean, they're really, and others are being pretty reasonably offered. And I guess I wanted to just set a goal out there, and this seemed like a reasonable goal. Now, we have kids in Casper, some of them homeschool, some of them public school. They'll graduate high school diploma, and have their AA degree. So it's pretty amazing. I mean, that's the extreme, I would say, right? That's the far extreme. The other extreme is, none, and then there's everything in between. But I think this, and the chairman of health just said it. I guess I didn't think of it that way, but really 3 hours per semester your last couple of years is a pretty good marker, and it works, I think, for a lot of kids. But you'll have kids in Newcastle come with many more hours, that's one example. And so I just wanted to put a little goal out there of 12 hours. And I think as much for anything as for parents to kind of know about it too. And yeah, so that's all I'm trying to do, set a little goal. Question, Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I'd like to make a move to amend.
Public comment?
We got to do public
Oh,
comment
I thought
first.
I'm
Are we done with?
I'm trying to cruise through this.
I know, it's a little bill. Okay, we're gonna move to public comment. Any folks here like comment on this bill, this little bill? Okay, seeing none, is there any folks online would like to comment?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have anyone with their hand up.
Nobody's hand up.
online.
Okay, so we're gonna close public comment and we're gonna move to the bill.
Excuse
And
me,
then-
Mr. Chairman, we do have somebody with their hand up now.
Okay, we're gonna go
Laura
back to
Pearson?
public comment. Laura Pearson? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
I better turn my mic on. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Laura Pearson. I'm actually a school bus driver in Southwest Wyoming and a 6th-generation sheep rancher. So I think it's great for children to have the accessibility to college credits. My children did it in high school. But my question is transportation in this bill. Is the state going to be responsible for transportation if a child can't get to the community college? And so therefore, that'll be more money that the state is going to have to pay to get these children to those facilities.
Okay, to answer your question, I think is no. And I think this is an optional, this is not part of a required or part of the school day, that kind of thing. This would be like going above and beyond, and it'd be a parent decision.
Okay, I just saw the transportation listed on 21-20-201. And so, like I said, my kids had to find their own way to these facilities. And so I just wanted to make sure that the state wasn't going to have to fund that.
Right, and I think this part of the statute, this paragraph is really about these agreements with the University of Wyoming and community colleges. So you're right, other paragraphs in that statute, in that section do deal with transportation, but this one is more about the agreements. So, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Anyone else? So anybody here, last chance. Okay, we're going to close public comment. Members, what's your pleasure? On the
I'll
bill.
move it.
Okay, been moved by Representative Zonser, seconded by Representative Oakley. Representative Oakley, I think, has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jumping the gun. Okay, so this is my thought. I also don't like to the greatest extent with reasonably shoved in there. I think those are two different things. So my amendment is this, but we could go with a different way. But I'm going to say line 8, strike the word reasonably. I'm going to then further say line 8, strike which shall, and replace that with this should.
So to read that, go
To-
ahead and read it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So striking, I don't know, just start line 7. Access to eligible students to the greatest extent possible. Well, I just still don't love it, but I'm using this language. Anyway, this should include ensuring access to a minimum of 12. It's that,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yes,
You like
sounds
it?
like a nice attorney language.
I-
Thank you.
I'm not loving how
Appreciate
it's all
your-
coming
No,
together,
it's-
actually, but.
It's not perfect. but Appreciate your expertise and your amendment. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Representative Bear.
I'm probably going to vote no on this amendment because I'd rather bring another amendment that says the shall would remain in there. I like the idea of putting a goal out there and the legislator saying, this is what they need to do, because it seems like you're trying to address these school districts that don't perform at the level of some others, and we're not asking them to go clear up to the top level of other districts, but just to meet a minimal effort on this. And it is only applying to eligible students. So I'm going to be a no on this amendment, but if it fails, I will bring another amendment.
Or even if it passes, you can. bring
That's
it.
right, that's right.
You could divide this amendment, but let's just vote on it.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Other discussion, members? Okay, sensing you're ready for the question, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
No.
I think that amendment has failed. Okay, any other amendments? Representative Bear?
Yes, sir. I'm going to bring an amendment that strikes the language on line 7 that starts with to the greatest. And then on line 8 strikes extent reasonably possible. And that's the extent of my amendment.
So it would read, go ahead and read it, just kind of starting on line 6, maybe.
Okay, education options programs pursuant to this section accessible to eligible students, which shall include ensuring access to minimum of 12 post-secondary credit hours.
Okay. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by a couple people. Representative Locke, okay. Go ahead, Nick, and just go ahead and comments, Representative Bear. Any more discussion? And then I think Representative Oakley has a question.
I think my comments were, sufficient before. It's
Yeah,
just
sure.
that we need to set a goal, and that's what this
Okay.
does.
Representative Oakley has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, I think the amendment's clear, and I think I just want to, I guess, reiterate, it's fine for a policy decision when shall, but like, for example, Representative Bear keeps saying to set a goal. A shall is not a goal. This is absolutely requiring that this be provided then for every school. A shall is a shall. It means what it means in the law, and it is a dictate.
Okay, Representative Swanitzer.
Well, let me check if it would be friendly to re-add the word reasonably there on line 7, because then I think it works. Otherwise, you are doing a double shall, and although I think most districts are there, I'm not convinced all 48 are. So I would feel more comfortable with some type of reasonable language instead of an edict. But I'm not sure that's friendly or not.
Okay,
It's not. So
and that
I'll-
could be another amendment. And you're talking about the first reasonably that is currently in statute.
Yeah.
On line 7, and that works too. I mean, yeah. Okay, very good. This group genius in action right here. Okay, Representative Bear.
I appreciate Representative Oakley's comments about goals, and that is an accurate statement to say this isn't a goal. This is setting a minimum, and I would agree with that. And I guess that's what I'm after, is to set a minimum.
Sure. Okay, Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious whether having the language eligible students provides a little bit of wiggle room for the school boards or the schools in that case.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't-
Representative Northrop.
Can I answer the question?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so not all students perform, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, through you, of course.
Sure.
So not all students perform the same in school. We have students that excel and do very well. We have students that do not apply themselves as well. And so eligible means that those students that are doing well enough that they're not hindering their graduation requirements. In other words, haven't passed all 3 math classes or English classes or whatever the case may be.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, any further discussion before we vote on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That amendment has been adopted. Are there further amendments? Representative Swanitzer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. At least for the current time, I would like to add reasonably back in on line 7 with the amendment. I'm not sure the bill was intended. I guess it is your bill, Mr. Chairman, but to put that floor standard across the board without some more discussion and ensuring all of our school districts are there. And there's a lot of other issues in this area, right, on how you count students in high school and are counting them at the college. And I'm just not convinced I want to make it a mandatory thing for all school districts without some more information. So I appreciate the word reasonably being in there and would move
Okay, is there
to.
a second on
add
that?
it.
Second by Representative Northrop. Okay, so then go ahead and read that, how you see it then, starting on line 6.
If I ask nicely, could I have the secretary read it with the word reason?
There you
Lynn?
go.
Thanks.
Line 6. Oh, sorry, yes. Education options, programs pursuant to this section reasonably accessible to eligible students, which shall include ensuring access to a minimum of 12, the number 12 left in, post-secondary credit hours to be completed in grades 9 through 12, and the numbers included.
I'd just like to, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to comment on why I didn't find it a friendly amendment. I understand the reason to put it in there, but, we heard testimony from Chairman Northrop here that, we've found ways to make these things work. And if we're going to put a minimum standard, I think that we should expect these districts to step up and find the methodology to make it happen.
Okay. Question, Representative Oakley has comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm probably going to be a no vote. Because I mean, unless somebody can tell me for sure that this is something that, I don't mind the shall if I know that every school district that we're requiring to has the capabilities to do it. Changing this reasonably, as far as I can see, is modifying the word accessible. And it doesn't change the fact that we are adding a shall. So I guess I'm uncomfortable unless I hear from more that I know that every district has the ability. I'm not comfortable with the shall.
Okay, anyone else? Any other comments? Representative, you want to wrap it up?
I would just say my amendment to the word, it is reasonably accessible and doesn't have anything to do with the word shall, but we can take that up after. But I think this does. I completely appreciate where everybody's coming from. I'm just not sure we want to set the floor, so.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote. The word is keeping the existing reasonably, which is in statute on line 7. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
No.
I think that's been adopted. Okay. Members, any other amendments to this little bill? Okay, I think we're in pretty good shape. I think we're ready to call the roll, and this is on House Bill 169 as amended.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke. Aye. Representative Northrop,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
No.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strzok,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
Aye.
Chairman Harshman.
Aye.
8 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, very good. Our next little bill is a member of the committee's bill. Representative Strzok is the prime sponsor, and this is House Bill 144. And so why don't you go ahead and explain the bill to us? What's your problem you're trying to solve, Representative? Either one, but you could probably go down there, and then I think members, but whatever. I think it'd be good. Why don't you go down and present your bill there? That'd be great. We'll wait for you to. Yeah. Put you in the hot seat down there. Either way, it works, but I think it's, for your first bill presentation, this would be good. And you got some helpers here, some friendlies, I think, so. I think you explain it and then they can come up next. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. So what we have here is we just want to be able to use the funds that we have and for maintenance and some repairs and both in the senior housing, and also it was set for senior centers, but then just be able to use it for the elderly and for the other programs. And that's about what it amounts to.
Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Strzok, you said using the funds we have. Who are you referring to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So what it is there was a, sorry about being nervous here. So they had a mill levy put in each county, and so it was for the senior center. And so that is that money that is available. And so the boards get together, the different boards, and it's for that. So what started this is we had, with our housing, they needed an elevator fixed. And it was right there beside the senior center. And it wasn't, they didn't have the money for it, but the senior center board, that committee, actually there was enough money to help fix that, but they were actually not allowed to use it for that. It was used for the set programs. And so that what we are doing is trying to be able to just be able to use this money to help each of the senior center and the housing.
So, okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Representative Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, so on page 2, we're taking out the possibility for senior centers to acquire property. So if a senior center wanted to move and their building, their current facility couldn't be, renovated, replaced, I was just wondering the reason behind that. I understand we don't want, unnecessary purchase of property, but I would assume that there will be a point where a senior center is dilapidated and beyond repair, and they might want to move to a different building and have those funds available.
Thank you, Chairman. That is a good question, but I think mostly to be able to keep it in the bounds of what originally was for is just for, programs, and not to get anyone where we're going to be building buildings. And
Mr. Chairman.
Turn my mic on for folks on. Okay, any other questions by the committee of the good representative? So this mill is a senior citizen service district mill, is that, and it's one mill?
correct.
Okay, and current statute, of course, this part form the district. And I'm just kind of cruising through this statute here, but funds and disposition of revenue and contract requirements. Okay. Okay, I think we'll have more questions about the statute, but members, any other questions? Okay. I think we're gonna open this to public comment now. Gentlemen, just come on up. You can both have a seat here. Appreciate you coming down here and tell us kind of the issue and this seems to be kind of a Converse County issue, because we're hearing from your counterparts around the state that don't like this. So we want to hear what the problem we're solving, and so we'll just work all through the chairman, and we don't have any back and forth. Okay, go ahead, introduce yourself, who you represent, where you're from.
I'm William M. Tibbs from Converse County, individual citizen that came interested in this. Don was elected to the board and shared with me that they were having problems utilizing the funds because of the way the statute was written. And so they, just a little fun thing, I was an original co-sponsor of this bill, this concept in about 1990. And my cohorts kind of nudged me into that position. Then when it was presented on committee of the whole, they nudged me into being the presenter. And it didn't pass then, obviously, but years later it has. I believe
Can I
wholeheartedly.
just stop for a second? So you're a former member of the House?
Yes, sir.
Oh, awesome.
I did 8 years,
How many?
8
Nice.
from 84 to 92.
I'm going to go out and find your picture out here then.
Oh, it's out there.
So who are your speakers then? Not to digress. 84. You're,
Roy Cross is the last one, Bill McAveen, oh gosh.
They're still doing,
around here?
still doing
Yeah.
good.
On back, teacher from Casper, oh well,
Taught at Dean Morgan, I think.
yeah, anyway,
He's still around too.
Yeah.
He's with us.
well, he passed away.
Oh, he did.
That speaker, anyway, they,
I'm going to go out and
yeah,
find.
it was fun. I was ready to go home when I quit, so.
Well,
8 years was enough.
appreciate
But-
your service.
I wholeheartedly support this concept because our senior centers and our senior programs struggled for years with attaining enough revenue to stay in business, basically. And so the person that's running our senior center in Converse County now told me that had this not happened and had we not passed it as a county, our senior center probably would have had to close because of budgetary problems. And so I totally support this. The senior programs need steady funding that they can depend on so they can do good programs. But when Don brought this to me, I read the language in the statute and it's like, well, I would be confused myself if I were trying to administer this. And our board had taken it to our county attorney for one thing, and he looked at it and he goes, well, I can't really give you an opinion because it is in conflict with itself. So we sat down as their board that administers the funds, and then with our board that runs the senior center, and also with representatives of the housing that is adjacent to the senior center. And we had a meeting and discussed everything. And so for Converse County, what we have put together is what we need in order to utilize the funds. Not totally, but we could use, what happened with Converse County, our board was conservative. They didn't do 2 mills, they did 1.2 because they figured that was adequate. We have an oil boom going on north of Douglas, and the board has $6 million that's come in revenue from that 1.2 mill levy. They can, they have a hard time under the present bill of spending maybe $100,000. So, but we have needs in the housing area, we have needs in the facility of our centers that can be improved, but this bill, the statute restricts capital construction. And so it was questionable whether they could even upgrade a kitchen. So that language, we need to be able to use the money that is coming in, not that we want to be extravagant with it. This is set up so it's local control. We've got a board that was elected by the people and will be reelected if they don't do, or not reelected if they don't do a good job. So the local control's there. I think we're not messing with the structure of the whole program. We're just saying, once the money comes in, we need to be able to utilize it. And we have these needs in our county that our senior citizen program needs, and we'd like to be able to use it. And I will tell you that if you're selling something, you set your highest price, okay? And then you're able to back off from that. And so we wrote what we would really like, but if some of it gets taken out, it's not gonna be the end of the world, but we do need flexibility in being able to spend. The part about purchasing property, I'm okay if that comes out. That,
How about, and I'm looking at the proposal, so just so to explain your situation in this housing, is it,
okay?
and it says in this proposed bill that facilities owned and occupied or to be occupied by senior citizen centers. So who owns this piece of property next to your senior center in Douglas that?
Let me tell you my thought process when I put this together. First thing that I want to accomplish is I want the boards across the state to be able to look at the statute and say, okay, we can do this without having to go to the county attorney or somebody else and seek legal advice as to whether we can spend this money. So we want the language to be simple enough that the boards can look at it and say, okay, we can do this and we can utilize this money here. So that's the first goal. The second thing that we came up with there's basically three areas in senior services, three major areas. The first is the facility. You need a building, and you need the things inside of that building that makes the programs work. So I created a paragraph for that. Then the second paragraph deals with programs. And the third paragraph brings in the assisted living housing that's for senior centers that is not part of the statute at this time, okay? So that's the thinking behind this. So in the first paragraph, that's dealing strictly with the facilities that house a senior center. And the thought process there is, I've looked, my father-in-law lived in Moorcroft, and I saw, they rented a building downtown, and then somebody bought a building, was going to give it to them, and then they wound up in the old high school. So there's situations where the senior center would need to renovate a facility that they were using. Some of the counties may have bought a house or an old office building that they would renovate. So that language would allow the senior center in a county to utilize these funds to work on the building they own, or work on a building that they were renting, or to renovate a building that they were going to occupy. So that language gives them the flexibility to utilize the money to create a facility and maintain a facility, okay? Then the next one deals with programs, and I didn't really change that. Don wants to address dementia programs a little bit because that needs to be added. Doesn't need to be put into this bill, but it's something that needs to happen across the state. So then the third paragraph is dealing with the assisted housing, not assisted housing, but subsidized housing that exists in some of our counties. Converse County, we had people years ago that were forward-looking, and they got an apartment building built next to the senior center, and it was built before sprinkler systems were required and some of those things. So there are upgrades that need to happen in that building. The elevator crapped out, and so they were going to have to quit renting the third floor to anybody that couldn't climb steps. And they got that worked out, but they've got other situations in that building. We have another building that's the same. Now, these are HUD buildings. They get assistance from HUD, but their margin of operation, I think they can set aside $1,700 a month. if you're looking at $150,000 repair on an elevator, it takes you 10 years to get the money to do that.
Yeah.
So in Converse County in 1985, there was a, what's the word I'm looking for? Foundation set up that was to assist these buildings in their maintenance through private donations. Well, it's been about 33 years, I think. And so getting private donations over 33 years to keep up the upkeep on a building, that kind of wears out. We've all tried to solicit funds and know that. So what we would do with this, those are strictly part of our senior programs, the housing. There are a lot of people in our counties that cannot afford or do not want to maintain their own residence, but they're still capable of living in an apartment. And so that's what these do for them. That third paragraph would allow the Revenue Board to assist those housing buildings with upkeep, and so that they don't become run-down buildings that our seniors are living in. So that's where we're going. And my thoughts were, this will help all the boards across the state. And what we're finding out is there's a bunch of the boards now that don't like what we did. So we're willing to give up a little bit, but we really need help in being able to utilize the money that we have. And I think in the long run, the other boards will find out that they had the same problem this board had with utilizing the money. So.
Okay, appreciate you being here. Any questions, Representative Tip? Appreciate you being here. Are you going to go up where and introduce you? You know, as a former member, you can come on the floor and give us some words of wisdom.
You can't lobby for Bill.
But you can't lobby for this.
I have to tell you this. When I ran in 1984, my motto was no new taxes. And in 1990 or 89, Roy Cross and Jim Twyford said, Tibbs, you need to co-sponsor this bill with us. And I'm going, oh, but the senior center was on it. So I put my name on it. And then Cross was in the chair and he's going, oh, Bill, I'm so busy, I can't present this bill. You're going to have to carry it.
There you go.
When it got done, Ron Michael, I said, your heart really wasn't in that, was it? So, but my heart is in it now. So,
Yeah. Well, appreciate you being here. And any questions, and I'm gonna move on to your partner. Go ahead, Representative Locke.
I'm off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, it appears to me that the disagreement, the bulk of the disagreement from the others, at least from what I have seen, appears to be this paragraph 4. And my question is, can you more concisely describe what that does? That is different, that might cause issues with these other groups that may have to deal with this. So it would be the Roman numeral 4 section.
Now, let's work through the chairman there.
Assistance of the HUD
Talking
buildings.
about on line 21, page 2. Down at the bottom, line 21, page 2, right? And then carrying over to page 3. Yeah. And just remember, working through the chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know the drill.
I know. Okay, my hearing aids aren't, one of them quit on me, so I'm having a little problem here. But so in paragraph 4, which line?
I think just the whole paragraph.
The whole paragraph?
Yeah, I think just that whole concept of giving taxpayer money to maybe a private
Okay,
facility, which is, it's pushing the bounds, obviously, on this, for.
Mr. Chairman.
constitutional. Go ahead.
Okay. These buildings are HUD buildings that are owned by the board. That is a local board of individuals that serve, they're corporations, they're nonprofit corporations, so they have to have a board. And the board technically owns the buildings, but they're nonprofit corporations. So these people are serving on these boards as volunteers, basically. And there's no profit they were designed and built for the senior citizens in our county, and they're owned by the board that is in control of them. So there's no money going off to a private individual or organization anywhere. They're strictly nonprofit corporations. There's a building in Glen Rock as well, so.
Now just, and we're in pretty good shape. It's 9:33. So
Okay.
we're,
You guys
I
gotta
just
go.
want us to, keep that in mind. That's out there. So I'm gonna move on. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and then you're both here for questions. So we're not done necessarily with you. So thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman Harshman, committee. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you. My name is Don Lurson. I was elected to the Converse County Special District Board in November, and we had a meeting the first week of December, and I was selected as the vice president of that organization. And the rest of the board asked me to speak for them today. I'm a veteran. I have 40 years of experience with the Forest Service. I retired as a district ranger. So I have a good management background behind me, understand budgets, large budgets. And when I was presented with this situation, it became clear very quickly. And just to update Bill a little bit, we're not sitting on 6 million, we're sitting on 13 million. And the current statute prohibits us from doing more than basically investing that money, which, what are you going to do with the investment if you can't spend it at some point? I have a major concern about facility maintenance. On our main floor of our center, there's only one bathroom. When you have 50, 100, or 200 seniors coming for activities, it's an awful long waiting line. And so because the capital investment restricts us from doing over a $5,000 dollar amount, we wouldn't be able to add more bathrooms. So people are beginning to drop off in their attendance because they don't want to stand in line for the bathroom. There's numerous things. There could be better bathroom facilities on the lower level, which includes a weight room, basically. No shower facilities or anything like that. So being able to expand those things would be a benefit to the people who attend the building. The other thing that I went to a number of doctors when I was elected to this board and asked them what they thought we needed to expand in services, because we can expand services. And every single one of them hit on dementia. There's so much misunderstanding about what dementia really is nowadays. And we have one nurse who has a specialty in that. There's no way she can cover the two communities we have. And so one of my intents is to expand that as we can by hiring more people, qualified people. And some of these other things that we need to do just to keep our buildings in shape is a matter of moving to this new bill that's been proposed.
Okay, very good. Appreciate you being here and appreciate you serving. Any questions, Representative Bear? And then do we have questions? Just go ahead, Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Larson. Just a question for you. You talk about $13 million being in your reserves. Has there been any discussion on your board about reducing the mill? Earlier there was discussion about raising funds, and we've got some private nonprofit organizations that are trying to maintain these buildings. Maybe if the funds were back in the hands of the people of your community, they could contribute to these private organizations. Has that been a part of the discussion at this point?
Go ahead,
Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. It has been a large discussion. Now, keep in mind, I've only been around for 3 meetings so far, but the problem's been there since the beginning. I'm not sure the whole thing was well thought out when it was initiated, but we've talked at our last two meetings about reducing the mill levy, not to a point where it's extinct, but to a point where it's more serviceable. And yeah, as I went around the community, I had quite a number of people express to me that they thought these monies were going to be for fixing things, for making the senior center itself and the living facilities more useful for our senior citizens.
Yeah. Go ahead, follow up.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's good to hear. Obviously, the taxpayers in this case are going to be this oil and gas companies that are in the big play. I hope that there's some conversation, wouldn't you agree, that there should be some conversation with those companies, that if a mill levy were reduced on them, that maybe they should contribute to some of these areas that need help?
Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bear, we in my short time in the community, one of the things I've done is a lot of door-to-door knocking, going to companies, talking to them about donations for services within the community, not just the center, but it is an opportunity my wife and I both take seriously. We do a lot of door-to-door things. We're involved in the community in every way we can be. And our chairman is really bringing these issues to the party to communicate with other people out there.
Okay, I'm going to move on to some more folks. Are there other folks here in the room that would like to testify on this bill? I just want to see where we're at. Is there anybody online? I think we've under.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we have a couple people online. If they'd like to testify, if they'd raise their hand.
Okay, let's bring them in and we'll. Okay, no hands so nobody else here that wants to testify on this bill. Okay, any other, and I guess here's my thing. I'd like you gentlemen to stay right there. We're gonna start working this bill, but we're gonna keep you here if we have questions. So we're gonna close public comment, but we want you here for questions. Okay, members, is there motion on the bill? Representative Zwanitzer?
Be happy to move House Bill 144.
Okay, seconded by Representative Bear. Okay. Now, members, any discussion, questions, and let's just work at amendments. It's all on page 2 and 3, right? So I've got several little amendments scratched in here, but I'll let the committee go first at it. Anybody? Representative Zwanitzer?
Thanks. First Amendment, I'd like to put back in the stricken language on lines 3 through 5, that if a senior center did want to purchase property, we've done that here in my community, that sometimes when this statute's only 20 years old, 25 years old, we perhaps didn't think that we might need new buildings and new centers over time. So putting that language back in on lines 3 through 5.
So you want to reinsert the language, but shall not be used for the purchase of real property or for capital construction.
Maybe I don't. That just went against what I said, didn't it?
That's what I thought I heard.
I'm going to have
so
another.
You like that part.
I like that language,
I do
Mr.
too.
Chairman.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Representative Bear.
Just to make sure that I heard correctly, but I think it's a friendly amendment to strike the language in subparagraph or Romanet number 4, where we're potentially creating a problem where we're using taxpayer dollars to go to private. I mean, I thought about maybe restricting the language, but I think it's probably better just to keep the money focused on the senior center and the programs. So if that's a friendly amendment, I would strike subparagraph Romanet 4.
Okay. Is there a second? There's a second.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Zwanitzer and by Representative Bear. Okay, discussion on this. Okay, and this is really the area where this bill is trying to affect. And the issue really is, these are income-based, it says in here, income-restricted housing within the district that are designated for senior citizens. Including maintenance, upgrades, address code or safety issues with the income-based or income-restricted facilities. Okay, Representative Bear.
And maybe the gentleman testifying can clear this up, but I know in my community, we have a 1% sales tax that is often used to contribute to nonprofit organizations in our community. And it seems that this organization, the Senior Center district, would also have that capability of assisting these organizations, not necessarily specific to maintenance, but in general. And maybe that's not a possibility, but if that could be cleared up, I'd appreciate it.
You want to comment on that, one of you gentlemen? Go ahead through the chair.
The thought process is that housing is there for senior citizens. It's part of our program, and this mill levy is for senior programs. And if people don't have a place to live, then they don't really need a senior center. So it just all fits together. I don't see that we're giving taxpayer money back to private, because it's not private. It's nonprofit organizations or corporations that are there for the benefit of the senior citizens in our county. So and to be honest with you, that's where a whole lot of our money needs to go, is to help upkeep those buildings. So I understand your thoughts, and other people have those thoughts as well. But if you take the whole concept of senior programs, the housing is an integral part of it. And keeping that housing up so that it doesn't become run down because we're depending on private donations doesn't make sense either. We wind up with slums. So.
Got the statute book out here, and it's not in this bill, but it's in paragraph B, which would come after this paragraph A, and it talks require that the provider be in an organization or an agency to be incorporated on the laws of the state as a nonprofit corporation for receipt of any of these funds. So they would have to be a nonprofit. It says it in the law.
They are.
And they are. Okay, that, I was just looking in here
Right.
where it's at, and it's not in here. It's in following paragraph B. Okay, Representative Bear, on the amendment?
Yeah, so it seems that it would be possible, and I'm still not hearing whether it's not possible for the funds that are in your reserve to be contributed to the nonprofit to be spent on the very concerns that you have. Seems like it's already in statute allowing that. Am I misunderstanding that?
I think, go ahead, and I think the way I read the current statute is totally about programs and services. I don't see a word in here about facilities as I
Right.
read through this 18, 15, 111 paragraphs A and B, which is not in this bill, B. I don't see the word facilities, and that's what you're trying to solve with this, really, part of it. Okay, so I think to be, Representative Bear, to be clear, I don't think they can use this money for facility, and your district, your attorneys told you that.
Just as clarification,
ahead.
wouldn't housing, I mean, can't you have a housing program which would then encompass facilities?
Mr. Chairman?
I'm just reading, and it talks about the expansion of existing senior citizen centers to provide programs. So, but go ahead. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the nuance we deal with. Go ahead.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We need to be able to deal with facilities because we need to do maintenance, or as Mr. Zautzer pointed out, at some point the structure may disintegrate and we need to go somewhere else.
And I think the existing statute, which is in this on page 2, line 4 and 5, it says, but shall not be used for the purchase of real property or for capital construction expenditures. And that's where you're obviously deleting that, but that's current law. Can't use it for,
We understand that,
Unless we
but
strike this.
yeah.
you made a comment about what our lawyer says, and our lawyer is baffled by the current statute.
Yeah.
Because he ends up speaking out of both sides of his mouth because of those conflicting paragraphs. So that's our intent, is to clear up those paragraphs and allow us to
Okay,
effectively
so
and
we're going to get back on this amendment now. We've got an amendment, and this is on to delete paragraph 4, and it's 9:48, folks, so we're going to keep moving. Thank you. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That amendment has failed.
Great.
Further amendments? No comments? Okay, I have a couple amendments. I would like to, on line 9 on your bill, bring back the word establishment. I don't think that hurts anything. And then also in this, on line 15, after programs, include the word or services, because that was deleted, and this second paragraph is supposed to be about programs and services. And then finally, on line 19, add in after transportation, we'll wordsmith it, but or dementia programs. You mentioned that. So that's my amendments. Ms. Jeffrey, you clear with that? Okay, is there a second? Okay, it's been seconded. Discussion? Okay, all those who have discussion, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, very quickly, would you prefer mental health instead of dementia, or do you think that's too broad? I just am trying to.
How about, I'll say that as friendly amendment, mental health / dementia services.
Okay.
How's that? That's friendly enough, and that makes it broader. Okay, Ms. Jeffrey, you good with that? That's a friendly amendment, so that's part of the amendment. Okay, I see no discussion. All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's been adopted. Any other amendments, members, on this bill? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready for the question on the bill. Please call the roll, Ms. Jeffrey, on House Bill 144 as amended.
Chairman Harshman, who seconded your amendment? I didn't.
I think Representative Bear did.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, ready for the vote. Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke, Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strock,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer,
Aye.
Chairman Harshman.
Aye. Okay, thank you, and thank you, gentlemen, for traveling down. Representative Tips, I'm gonna meet you outside and look at your pictures right after this meeting. Okay, so I'll meet you right out here. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for driving down here today. Okay, next bill for our consideration is House Bill 111, another little bill that updates our statutes, and it's brought by a member of this committee, Representative Oakley. Welcome, look forward to you explaining this quick little bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the Revenue Committee. I seem to keep getting the last bill, so I have 9 minutes. Luckily, this is a bill that can be explained and hopefully passed in 9 minutes. So what this bill is, it broadens an existing statute of felony child endangering by way of, if you have currently in statute, if you've got methamphetamine in the same room as children, that is a 5-year felony. All this does is add and fentanyl to this existing statute. So very quickly, I was going to have people, maybe it's fine. I was going to have some people, excuse me, testify. But we heard from DCI, there's just been a huge increase in the fentanyl that we're seeing. There's a whole thing, it's being produced by Mexican cartels, and it's just absolutely flooded us in Wyoming. It's just been incredible to watch it go from a couple years ago, something we didn't see, to it now being the most prevalent drug. On top of that, it's the most dangerous. We're seeing accidental deaths. There have been sometimes around the country, we've had accidental contact by law enforcement that's resulted in dangerous, so that law enforcement isn't even touching it. It's like they're gloving up to even handle this stuff. Excuse me, sir. And so anyway, so all this is one way. We're going to start looking at implementing, probably in a couple different ways, fentanyl, and criminalizing it more to try to get a handle on it in our statutes. This is an easy start and a fix to that.
gentlemen, and if you guys could just maybe take your conversation outside, that'd be great. And you're good. I mean, I just want to, you're good. We just want to finish this up.
And so that's the bill. I do want to say that I'll be bringing an amendment. It's easy, it's basic. I've talked to a couple people in the room here that are interested in it. Anyway, we want to make sure that we say, that we carve out if you have a prescription, because there is a fentanyl, it's used like in extreme pain, cancer, terminal cancer patients, things like that. So there is a fentanyl. And unbeknownst to me, till 5 minutes before this hearing, I guess there is a carve out where some people can get a methamphetamine prescription. Literally did not know that, but I guess there are a few people in our state, just a few, that have a prescription for that. So the amendment that I will be along the lines of, unless properly stored and pursuant to a valid prescription.
And you're going to bring that in this as a
And
standard.
I'll bring that as an amendment. I just want to say that because I know also there's people here who I've talked to that I don't want them to feel like they have to testify if I'm not going to bring that, and I am going to bring that. So that might save us some time as well. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions, members? Yeah, it's real similar. I was in the legislature, I think you were too, and we were working the methamphetamine crisis when all these, so we got to continue to adapt. So I appreciate you bringing this. Is there anyone here who's opposed to this bill? We'd like to hear from you if you're opposed, okay? Now, how many, just raise your hand, are here to support the bill, would like to testify on the bill? Now, Chairman, given the time, can we, you can kind of see where this bill's going. I mean, giving you feedback, nodding head. I mean, I think we're in pretty good shape with this bill. But if there's somebody who wants to speak against it, we want to hear it. That's the main thing. And if there's some folks who have traveled here, has anybody driven here for this bill? Driven from Casper or Sheridan? We'd love to hear from you. And anybody just really wants to speak on it, we'd love to hear from you. Because I can just tell you really want to speak on this, so go ahead. No, we're pushed for time, but we're gonna be all right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sheila Bush with the Medical Society. I don't really want to testify on it, but I did want to clear up and just make sure that the amendment coming, prescribe is great, also administer. So fentanyl nasal in pediatrics, in trauma or severe burns. So I don't know if prescribing counts as administering, and I'm sure Director Martineau can help, and so can Director Bonneblest, who's also here.
Okay, very good. Any questions, Ms. Bush? Okay, thank you for that. We'll get on. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Chairman Harshman, members of the committee, my name is Matt Martineau. I'm the Executive Director for the Wyoming State Board of Pharmacy. Real quickly, the good bringer of the bill mentioned a couple of amendments. I had passed out a handout that kind of highlights those. In A, it would be important to retain the reference to 64403B because that's the piece that allows practitioners to prescribe or have a medical order for these substances. It is also the piece that Sheila Bush had mentioned that would allow for the administration by healthcare providers or the dispensing by a pharmacy. And then because of the reference in the insert of it here into 405, it's what would allow a family member to then dispense or administer these medications to a child. The bill also down on line 20, we had a couple of suggestions to insert illicit before methamphetamine and fentanyl because there are legitimate uses for these prescription drugs. For the past 2 or 3 years, in 2020, there were 37 prescriptions for methamphetamine. 2021, there were 32. And in 2022, there were 40 prescriptions for methamphetamine. In those same years for fentanyl, in 2020, there were 6,279 prescriptions for fentanyl, 5,527 prescriptions for fentanyl in 2021, and 5,027 prescriptions for fentanyl in 2022. And so the reason to keep or to have that distinction down in B is because that allows a caregiver, whether that's the parent or other family member, to be able to have these medications, store them in the house, make sure that they're using them appropriately following medical directions, and that act does not end up constituting child endangerment. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Yeah, questions. A good doctor. Okay, appreciate your help in making sure we get this right. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, please. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kevin Bond, blessed Executive Director of the Board of Medicine. And I certainly think that Representative Oakley's proposed amendment will take care of virtually all the concerns that we have, because there are legitimate uses for both of these drugs with pediatric patients. And believe it or not, methamphetamine is not all bad. It's nearly all bad, but not all bad. The one thing I would actually disagree with my friend from the Board of Pharmacy is on page 2, first line, I think you should strike the notwithstanding, because notwithstanding is a terrible word we lawyers mess around with too much. But what that basically said, because when, as you said, Mr. Chairman, we were in the real scourge of methamphetamine, then they didn't want to have an exception to say, oh, you can have it, which is what 403 B Romanet 4 is. It's an exception. You can give this, you can prescribe this and so on. This says notwithstanding, so it means in spite of that exemption, you can't give methamphetamine to a minor, or to a child. So actually, you're going to clean this up a whole bunch if you do leave that strike there, because it's confusing. It's backwards language we lawyers like to use. So that would be the only thing I would note there. If there are questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I'll get out of the way and let you do your work.
Okay, question of the doctor. Okay, thank you so much for being here, your testimony. Anyone else like to testify? Okay. Any other comments on the notwithstanding? We have a little thing on that. Okay. Anybody online? Think we're moving? Okay, we're going to close public comment, but if you're here, we might call on you for a question. So that's what you get for coming to a meeting. You might be getting the hot seat. Okay, with that, is there a motion on the bill?
So moved.
So moved by Representative Northrup. Second by Representative Locke. Okay. Okay, so we have the bill. It's basically all on page 2. See the proposed bill. Are there amendments to this? Okay, Representative Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope
Do you want to work off the
I get this
amendment that
right,
was given to
but
us? Or do you want to work off the bill?
it's simple either way, I guess.
Okay.
So what I would say, my amendment's going to include keeping that language, the notwithstanding language, keeping that stricken. I agree with the last speaker. This notwithstanding can make things a mess, and I did discuss with LSO. If we get it wrong, I guess we can bring it back to the floor, but I think that stays out. So what my amendment would be is before that, to start the sentence with, unless properly stored and pursuant to a valid prescription, comma, so that would go in the place of the notwithstanding, to add that language in there. So that's one. And then at the same time, because I think we can do this, to include the language from the amendment, which puts illicit in line 20, put illicit before methamphetamine and illicit before fentanyl. And I think then we double cover that, what we've discussed, which is both pursuant to a prescription, illicit. So I think hopefully, let me check my audience. Am I doing okay? Okay, that's the amendment.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Representative Zwanitzer. Okay. Ms. Jeffrey, you got the amendment. That first line, go ahead.
So the page 2, line 1 will start with, unless properly stored and pursuant to a valid prescription, comma, no person. And then, I don't know if you have a copy of the amendment that was handed out, but page 2, lines 20, it adds illicit in front of methamphetamine. And the way it's written as handed out in this is kind of wrong. It says
be
illicit or
or.
fentanyl, so obviously don't do that, but.
Or illicit.
Or illicit fentanyl. Those are
Yeah.
transposed, but simple enough. That's the amendment.
Okay, discussion. Okay, all those in favor, question called, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That amendment's been adopted. Any other amendments, Representative Swanson?
Question for the bringer, do you want it effective immediately or July 1st? Does it matter to you?
Go ahead, Representative Oakley.
Mr. Chair, I certainly would support that as amendment to have this effective immediately.
Okay, moved by Representative Swanson.
So moved.
Is there a second by Representative Northrup immediately on page 3, line 1. Ms. Jeffrey, you have that. Okay,
Language.
standard deal. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's been adopted. Any other amendments? Okay, sensing you're ready to vote on the bill, we'll call the question on House Bill 111 as amended. Please call the roll.
Representative Bear,
Aye.
Representative Byron,
Aye.
Representative Locke,
Aye.
Representative Northrup,
Aye.
Representative Oakley,
Aye.
Representative Storer,
Aye.
Representative Strzok,
Aye.
Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman Harshman.
Aye. Okay, thank you, members. It's been a long time since we've done 5 bills. Nice work. Members of the public, thank you. Thanks for driving down from Converse County. Appreciate you being here today.